You're listening to Get Out and Drive podcast with John, CustomCarNerd Meyer, and Shawn, MrSedanMan Sherrill. We'll be bringing you gearheads all the information you never wanted to know about cars and why they should be on the road and not in your garage. Are you ready to get out and drive?
Hey, we're back with another episode of Get Out and Drive podcast. I'm Shawn, MrSedanMan Sherrill.
I'm John, CustomCarNerd Meyer.
You know, John, one of our concerns is bringing the next generation into the hobby, into the industry, and getting them involved. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I've learned, I guess, since we started this podcast, there are more younger people involved than what I thought there were.
Oh, very much so. Social media has brought everybody closer and actually showed how much interest there is.
Right. So there's a lot of interest out there, particularly in the hobby side of it.
Sure.
But, you know, we really need to get some of those younger people that are into the hobby, into the industry, working on cars, doing some restoration.
Doing restoration and having knowledge and management and things, yes.
Right. And, you know, one of the groups that is actively doing something about this is the RPM Foundation.
Fantastic foundation.
Yep. And today we have Nick Ellis, who is the executive director of the RPM Foundation, with us. Good morning, Nick.
That's Nick.
That's Nick.
Fantastic.
Good morning, guys.
Technology.
Thanks so much for having
I love
me.
technology.
Yeah. Makes the world small sometimes, doesn't it?
It does. It's absolutely incredible.
How you doing today, Nick?
Real good. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for spending some time with us. Tell us what you guys do there at the RPM Foundation.
Yeah, so this came out of the concern that there's not enough young people getting into this industry. If you look at the push in the 70s and 80s for all people to pursue a 4-year college degree, that resulted in a tremendous skilled trade shortage in the U.S. and particularly in vehicle restoration and preservation. Mm-hmm. So what the RPM Foundation does is we try to combat that with support for careers in the industry. So we do grant funding for scholarships for young people who want to get into classic car restoration and preservation. We do other types of grant funding like internships, apprenticeships. We'll support high schools that have a project that they're working on with parts and equipment funding. Okay. Aside from the grant funding, we've got programs of our own where we do apprenticeships and internships of our own, and we do programs to introduce young people to different aspects of the industry. So anything we can do to influence and welcome young people into the industry is what we do.
Oh, very cool. You know, you mentioned the high schools. I remember when I was in high school, there was an automotive shop. We could go in and we could learn how to work on cars. And I remember even doing some body work, you know, if you want to call it body work in the hour time we had to do.
Right.
You know, but that stuck in my brain, particularly that class. You know, now I'm a restoration mechanic at a shop. And, you know, I still remembered going specifically to that class and doing some of the things I used to do. And a lot of high schools don't have that anymore. They don't give the kids a hands-on, you know, experience.
Right, everything is pushed towards traditional 4-year college degrees.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nick, how many high schools do you find that have some sort of program anymore?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I mean, we're seeing it disappearing at an alarming rate. And you know, when we recruit students to attend our programs, if we're going to take a group of students to a shop hop where we bring them to different restoration shops or a vintage car race where we bring them to an SVRA race, we rely on community colleges and high schools that have automotive programs to do our recruiting. And we get our lists of schools that have automotive programs, and about 20% of the time when I call a school that has an automotive program listed, I'm told that the program's been shut down within the last couple of years. Yeah. So it's very disturbing to see that kind of a trend. And that's why it's important for us to do everything we can to combat that. I think there needs to be more of a lobbying presence with, you know, funding going to the schools to maintain these trade programs. But I mean, as far as the programs themselves go, the ones that are still existing are very well attended. We've got a school in Wisconsin called Freedom High School in Wisconsin. All of the other programs are seeing drops in the enrollment, any of the elective courses, but this one in particular, it just keeps increasing every year. There's more and more interest in it. So that's why I was glad to hear you say earlier that there is genuine interest among this generation. We hear a lot of people saying, kind of going negative on it, saying, oh, kids today, they don't care about cars. What we have to be asking ourselves is, why are there not more young people getting into this? And what can we be doing to engage them and increase their participation in it?
Do you find that anywhere in the United States there's more interest in one area than another geographically?
Yeah, the Midwest is actually a real hotspot for restoration shops in general, and then also the programs remaining in the schools. We're seeing a lot of them in California, and in New York, I don't really have a lot of data on, but the Midwest seems to be so far where it's holding together the most.
That's good. I see attitudes of owners changing. I see people like Herb Clark, who you supported in the Great Race and the X Cup team. He, just as I do and Shawn does, very much get in, touch it, feel it, put kids in a car, take kids to a car show, that type of thing. That needs to happen. I saw that a lot at the Great Race. We took a lot of pictures of that. We saw the MG.
Yeah, it was as we was walking through.
Yes.
We just happened to walk up to the vehicle, and the owner of the vehicle was opening the door, so it was a young boy and young girl could sit in the car. I mean,
they looked like they were between 6 and 12.
Right.
And young enough that they would not have any reason to see that or touch that. And I even witnessed and listened to the mother, because the father was ecstatic.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, kids are getting in the car, and we were ecstatic to see that the owner had said, hey, do they want to get in? And he opened the door, helped them, showed them what the controls were and what things were, and let them touch and feel the car short of driving it. And the mother, we were both standing there. The mother just reacted, and she said, thank you so very much, with a huge smile. And this is very welcoming that you actually asked to have these kids in your car.
Yeah, these kids are grinning ear to ear, and that, you know they're going to remember that when they get older.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
That just nails our What Drives Youth initiative, and what you have to do, and our listeners out there, when you're at a car show, that you're not tossing the keys to a 4-year-old and saying, go take my car for a spin.
Right.
But it's the fact of open the door, get them in, show them what the controls are, show them if you do this, this happens, and this happens. People learn by cause and effect, and that's what I did. And you have to be able to teach. I have my mentors that I grew up with, and that's exactly what you're promoting. And I can't say thank you with a big enough smile.
Oh, absolutely. And you hit it right on the head as far as, what we need to be doing as members of the interest in the industry right now. It's being as welcoming as possible. And it's not just, examples like Herb Clark, like you were talking about. Herb is a RPM ambassador. He is a tremendous, tremendous mentor to youth. And everything that he's doing with the Archway Restoration Club is right on track with what we need to be doing. We also need to be more accepting as kind of, at this age, I think we can consider ourselves part of the old guard. We need to be more accepting of what the new guard is interested in. Maybe if they're driving a 1993 Miata, maybe that's not something we would consider to be a classic car, but to a teenager, that's far older than they are.
Right.
So this is, old technology. This is old design to them. If they want to bring that to a car show, they should feel welcome. They shouldn't feel like, well, you keep that over there and don't put it next to my 32 Ford.
Yes.
Put it next to the 32 Ford, because you never know, the kid who's driving that car might look at that 32 Ford and say, that's my next one.
Right.
By doing this, we could be introducing them to an entire, what they consider to be new area of interest.
Very much so.
Yeah, because an 18-year-old kid, he's certainly not going to be able to afford to go out and buy a 32 Ford. I mean,
no.
Me in my 50s can't afford to really just go out and buy a 32 Ford, but, they can buy a Miata. Mm-hmm. It's in their price range. It gets good gas mileage. It could be the only car they have to drive around. Right. It's not like they've got the cash flow to have a daily driver and something sitting in the garage. And I always say, build what you can with what you have. and get out and drive it, enjoy it. And I think you're right. I think a lot of people want to put a stigma on newer cars or.
We talk about quite a lot on our show, the 30-year cycle of nostalgia.
Yeah.
How and why that happens. We go in depth and deep dive on that off mic on
a lot.
A lot, way too much. And our restoration shop is seeing 70s and 80s cars being restored. Talk to them about the Buick that we have no idea why it's being restored.
Oh, it's an 82 Buick LeSabre. Yeah, it had been sitting for a while. We brought it in and went through it mechanically and got the thing where you can just bump the key and probably drive it anywhere now. I know.
Right.
And I don't need to know why.
And yes, you heard us right. An 82 Buick LeSabre.
Yeah.
Well, now my question for that is was this his car when he was younger? Is he a younger guy who's interested in this?
I would put him I've only seen him in the shop one time, and I've not personally talked to him. I would say early to mid 30s. So this could have been his dad's car. It could have been his grandpa's car. And that's what we're running into a lot. I was talking about the square body trucks. Somebody was talking to me the other day. I was like, man, I just don't get this square body truck thing. Like, why are they becoming so popular? And he's talking about, I remember when my grandpa had one. Like, there you go. You nailed it right there. I remember when grandpa had one. And that's where your nostalgia goes back to.
Yes.
Me being in my 50s, I remember my grandpa having something from the 60s. 30 years later, somebody remembers their grandpa having something from the 80s. And it's just going to progressively move on.
Correct. And I'm driving a 94 Suburban that technically I can put historic plates on that vehicle.
Yeah.
And that scares me. I was frightened when I saw Hemmings Motor News did it on purpose. They put a 1987 Astrovan on their cover of the Hemmings Motor News to freak people out.
Well, a 1984 Plymouth Voyager was just inducted into the Historic Vehicle Association list of acknowledged vehicles. So, it's a consistently changing. You can call it the point of entry or the point of interest. It's that target is always moving.
Yes,
right, and it always has been. I mean, I've heard stories of the hot rodders from the 30s and 40s when muscle cars come along. Why do you want to mess with that new car for? That thing's just stupid. That's going to be a throwaway car.
Yes.
And now everybody wants a muscle car, and it just like you said, it's always progressing.
I was restoring a 55 Chevrolet convertible for a customer, and he has 5, 6, 7 Chevy hardtop convertible of each year. He's got a nice set of 6 plus about 15 other cars, and he came in, and I was restoring an SS 396 70 Chevelle. And he said, why would anybody interested in that new car?
I heard you talking about this on the show with Herb Clark. And while I was listening to that, I remember, so I used to be in business with my father. We had a restoration shop, or a smaller dealership where we would buy, restore, and sell cars.
Sure.
And because I was working with my dad, big Ford guy, loved Fords from the 30s and 40s. So that was typically what we did. And then personally, I bought a 1968 Mercury Cougar. So I bring the Cougar to the dealership to show my father, and he goes, "Did you buy this for? It's a new car."
Yes.
And this was, this was in 2012.
Right.
He says, "That's all new technology. This isn't exciting at all." But
yes,
for me, that's 3 years older than I am.
That is correct. Fast forward that exact thought 30 years.
Yeah.
You're in a 93 Miata. You can't stop your watch. You also can't stop automobile interest.
Right.
It cannot happen. I know the feeling as of right now, and just clicked previous generation why that man with a 55 Chevrolet was saying that the 70 Chevelle was a new car. Same as exactly the same mirror as what you were just saying. And it is the same experience from two different people separately at separate times. Amazing watching the progression of what's happening unfold in front of me. And Shawn and I have been talking about this for 10 years or more. And I've been personally feeling it since the late 90s And it's just amazing to watch it evolve in front of you, and to watch it on social media, those who decide to follow the path of progression and those that don't. I applaud. It's scary for me to say this right now, and I'm half my mind is saying, what are you talking about? I applaud good guys. I applaud Street Rod, Street Rod Nationals
NSRA,
and all that stuff, and NSRA. I applaud all that for the inclusion.
Yes.
And for the moving forward. I've already tried to bring, many years ago, a 1964, 65 car to a NSRA show or a Good Guys show. They wouldn't let me in. Good Guys forever was pre-war, and so was NSRA. And when they went after that, we all said, it's a money grab. It's a money grab. It's not. It's the movement forward of mentality and progression. Inclusion and progression. Right. Even Good Guys is come all on Sunday. Any show, you could bring a 2021 vehicle on Sundays to a Good Guys show. Right. It's a come all on Sunday. And I think that's helpful to the industry.
Yeah, I think we're seeing the attitudes changing. And, one of the encouraging things that I'm seeing is we've been working with the Concours on introducing what we're calling the RPM Futures class.
Okay.
And this is if you are 30 years old or younger, or if you're currently enrolled in automotive program. We want to make this accessible to, maybe military veterans who are looking to change careers. If you have had a hands-on component in the restoration of your vehicle, and if your vehicle is 1995 or earlier, you can bring your vehicle to a Concours. We're going to first unroll this at the Hilton Head Island Concours in November. We're going to be at Boca Raton in February, and we're going to be at the Keeneland Concours in Kentucky. I think that's in July of 22.
Okay.
So this is an opportunity for, we've got a terrific young woman in our network who has a 1985 Chevy pickup truck that she restored herself. Her name's Cassidy Nixon. She is going to have her pickup truck on the Concours field next to the Ferraris and the Lamborghinis. So this is an opportunity for both sides, I think, to benefit. The young people get the excitement of having their car featured alongside these other cars, and maybe it's going to spark their interest in these other cars. And then the established folks who have been there for years and years are going to see that there is interest in the industry. There are young people who are passionate about this and are the future of this industry and this interest. We just need to welcome them in.
Do you, during the Concours that you're talking about, is there a style of vehicle that is limited? Because I know you say Concours, that is generally, to me, meaning stock appearing or restored as close to stock as possible. For the class you're talking about, is that still strict rules, or can it be modified in any way?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's varying. What I'm noticing is it varies from Concours to Concours. Hilton Head has been very open to different types of vehicles coming in, and we've had other conversations where they say, well, no, we want to have it reasonably stock. So it's going to ultimately be up to the selection committee at the Concours.
Okay. I'm on that note, I was really glad to see, in the Pebble Beach circle, not only brass era cars, the significant coach built cars and things, the hot rods and the custom cars that have been allowed to be there as rolling art just about brought a tear to my eye as an amazing thing that happened. I'm an incredible follower of vintage Bonneville type cars that were run, roadsters and things like that, and also how that evolved into late 40s, early 50s custom cars before everything got wild with show rods. And I think that's just amazing that they're allowed to be in there, because there is just as much or more coach building a one-off complete built custom car as there is coach building a 31 Delahaye, or whatever. Yes.
Think about the level of craftsmanship it takes to chop a roof or to channel a body. I mean, the geometry and getting everything to line up correctly and look smooth and look like it was built that way.
Yes.
It's a tremendous talent that's been, in my opinion, underrated for a very long time. And it's really wonderful to see it get the recognition it deserves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just unbelievable to see a brass era car next to Hirahata Merc, or a brass era car next to, Vic Edelbrock's car, or anything, Dick Flint Roadster. That type of thing was amazing to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And both, like you said, the craftsmanship on any of those cars, just incredible.
Yeah.
Like the Concours, if the younger generation sees that as older people with big hats, and
a little bit they have to. I mean, that's the front that they put out.
Right.
It's no different than trying to bring a donkey to the Kentucky Derby.
Right.
That's kind of the feeling.
And I don't know if that's off-putting on the younger generation a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Me, I probably wouldn't feel like I fit in with that crowd.
My pinky is not up high enough.
Yeah,
I mean, that's kind of how I feel, and I've been involved with the situation for a really long time.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that they're all
it's not good or
that
bad.
way, or that it's good, it's bad. Mm-hmm. I just think that maybe it's the perception of what the atmosphere is like.
Possibly.
Maybe.
Well,
I don't know.
I think a lot of people talk about what that catalyst was for them getting into this interest or the industry. A lot of times it comes down to that one meeting, maybe with one person. Mm-hmm. So even if there is that general atmosphere that maybe they're uncomfortable with, really all it takes is the right person coming over, complimenting the car, giving tips, and mentoring that person. So, I think the more opportunities that we give young people to be there, the more we can rely on the right people to come along, break through the barriers, and encourage them to stay in and pursue it.
Yes, I think what you're doing with social media and promotions and removing that stigma, or saying, hey, we'll hold the rope up for you. You can come over here and look and see what this is all about. Maybe you're interested in it. Maybe 0.5% of the kids that are now in the automotive technical field schools, maybe they are going to go that way. Maybe they're going to go towards custom cars or muscle cars, or maybe they're going to be part of the tuner guys. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you have to you have to allow them and have them into the group.
Right.
Well, we have to expose them to it. I had a very interesting meeting when I was doing recruitment for our apprenticeship program at one of the technical schools in Pennsylvania. Huge school. They had about 1,200 automotive students in the program. And I sat down with their auto body chief instructor and their automotive technology chief instructor. And I asked them both, I described the program. I said, we're looking for those students that are really passionate about this, that really want to pursue restoration and preservation as a career. It's a very different career from automotive technology and collision repair. And I said, do you have students that you think would be interested in? And immediately, without even pausing, the collision repair instructor said no.
Wow.
I said, well, why would you say that? He said, these kids are there to learn XYZ. They want to do the job in this amount of time, and they want to get the car out, and they want to go on to the next job. I said, why do you think that is? He says, well, that's what they know. I go, so if we were to introduce them to some other possibilities,
right,
and tell them that this is a possibility as a career, and maybe get them interested by taking them on tours or having, restoration shop instructors come in and talk to your classroom, do you think then maybe you'd have some students interested? He says, oh yeah, definitely. So
understanding what you were saying, he said that's what they're going to do. That was your quote. Is that what they're going to do because that's what they were instructed to do, and they weren't given the opportunity to even try to step into another pool? Is that where you're headed?
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm headed. What I say all the time is, if the RPM Foundation had been around when I was in high school, my career would have looked completely different. I always loved mechanical things. I was the kid who took things apart. I had a TV in my bedroom that was completely disassembled. I drove my parents crazy because nuts and bolts and screws all over my house. But I had no automotive program at my high school. And there was never even a moment where I considered, hey, because I really enjoy this, maybe I should pursue it as a career. So my career looked completely different because of that. And I frame everything that I'm doing in relation to the RPM Foundation in that light, because if we are offering these opportunities, if we're raising awareness among that generation that this is a viable career, that this is something that you can do and love and be passionate about. These are the kids that you got to drag them out of shop class. When when they turn the lights on, they want to stay there.
Right.
Those are the kids that belong in this field, and we just need to find them.
Right. And I think you make a good point. I think a lot of people just don't realize that there's those opportunities available to them. I know a lot of people watch reality TV and they always think, oh, that'd be kind of fun to work on old cars and that, but they don't realize that sometimes it's right in your backyard. You know, maybe it ain't a TV show, but there's restoration shops everywhere. And I know when I go out and talk to people and, you know, they ask me, what do you do for a living? I'm a restoration mechanic. I'm like, oh, you mean like the people on TV? I'm like, well, kind of, but, you know, yes and no. And I got to explain to what the difference of what they're seeing on camera and what real life is. But they don't realize that, oh, I didn't even know there was a shop there that did that kind of stuff. Are that many people interested in that? Like, oh yeah, you know, there's car guys are everywhere. Car guys, car girls.
And there's a lot of car guys that are not T-shirt and blue jeans. There's a lot of car guys that are suit and tie. They're hiding. They're Superman. I've met more people at non-car guy events than I have at a car show. Yeah. You know, and just say, and I guess it has to do a little bit with wealth, but I happen to slip up and say, oh, hey, you know, I worked on a 36 Ford today, or I worked on a 70 Daytona today. And I did, I'm sorry, 69 Daytona.
Okay. All right.
I'm sorry, because I'm working on a 70 Charger.
Yeah.
I got them confused today. See, I'm not into the muscle car stuff.
Yeah, I know.
But working on a 70 Daytona, gosh, now you got me saying it. Working on a 69 Daytona.
There you go.
But I see that, and I happen to slip up and say that to someone, and they're like, oh, well, you're interested in cars. Or I'll say a car guy phrase or do something. He goes, oh, well, I have, you know, these cars and this and that at the airport, and I've got, you know, 50 cars that I own. And this guy's in a $5,000 suit, and he's the CEO of some company. And I don't know that guy from Adam. He's, you know, driving a late model car, and he doesn't want anybody to know he collects cars. And that's just amazing. But the car guys and girls, they're hiding everywhere.
Yeah, but I guess my point is, you know, if the younger generation doesn't realize that there's these kind of opportunities available to them, you know, they'll never know, and they'll go on to another desk job or do some other other career. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to start my automotive career 1 week out of high school. I immediately started to search out where to get an auto body job.
Right. But you had been around that as a kid.
As a kid. And
a lot of people are
not.
And I think if you start I think if you start introducing the younger generation to what's available to them with social media now. Right. This is what I'm doing today. This is what I'm getting into, and people that interest can spark a little more, I believe.
Yes.
And you kind of touched on something that I want to actually discuss with you guys. You talked about how you had been kind of immersed in it as a kid. You know? So, you know, I don't know if that meant that your father took you into the garage and showed you how to change spark plugs. And I don't know that we have that same opportunity these days, because vehicles are so advanced with technology, and even the ones that aren't particularly advanced, they're constructed in a way that it's not as easy to work on them as it used to be. So I don't think you have that parent bringing the child into the garage to show them how the family, how to do maintenance on the family vehicle anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's now this kind of sealed, hermetically sealed, you never change the spark plugs. You take it to the Jiffy Lube every hour, 1,000 miles, and it's done in 15 minutes. There's not as much of, we've kind of lost that component of things where this is a young person's introduction into getting their hands on a vehicle.
Yes.
Would you guys agree on that?
Yeah, I do agree with that. I guess I hadn't really thought much about that, but that is a good point. I mean, so many people now will buy a new car, late model car, not late model like the 80s like we consider, but something 5-10 years old, and they'll take it to someplace to even have the oil changed. And to me, changing the oil, changing the tire, maybe not so much changing the oil, but that should be part of the driving test, changing the tire.
Shawn talks about that all the time, that I don't know if we could do any kind of lobbying with RPM Foundation, but I really want to get the driver's test like they do in Europe. I really want to get it safety oriented. If there's a problem, how to make sure your car is seen, how to provide safety cones, what should be in your car, how to change a tire, and make sure that young people or all people in general are safe. And I think that should be part of driving test. And we really are strongly towards that.
Yeah, because I've talked to a lot of people, younger people in their 20s. I hate to call them kids, but I find myself calling people in their 30s kids now.
Right.
And I never understood that until I got the age that I am now. But but I've talked to people in their 20s. Like, have you ever changed a tire? Like, no, but I could figure it out. That's not on the highway when people's buzzing by at 80 miles an hour is not the time to figure it out. I always, I made my kids in the driveway go rotate my tires, and make them do it there. But
I've got two younger brothers. One's 5 years younger than me and one's 9 years younger than me. And when both of them were learning how to drive, I made both of them change a tire because they're not going to learn it, anywhere else. And exactly what you said, you don't want to learn how to change a tire when semi trucks are flying past you at 80 miles per hour.
Right. But little things. I mean, send your kids out to, teach them how to check oil, just the basic fluids. I mean, at least do that. People, but if people go to a quick lube place to get their oil changed, they should at least check their oil from time to time and do some preventative maintenance, if you will.
But these are the things that I think when you hear those people saying, the kids today aren't interested in it, these are the things that I think people need to be asking themselves. Why aren't they interested in it? Right. I don't think this generation is so fundamentally different than the generations that went before them. It's just that they have not been exposed to it in the way that we were. So we need to be asking ourselves, what can we do to expose people, them to this as an interest in an industry? And I think the car clubs can be a tremendous tool in that. I mean, that's, you've got chapters of different clubs all throughout the country that could be connecting with, local schools to invite students to come to their meets, give a tech session, show them how to change the spark plugs on a simple 4-cylinder Ford flathead engine that's right there in front of you, so that they understand, underneath all those panels on your car, this is what the engine, because the concept hasn't really changed that much since the original. We're still talking about, valves and pistons and gas air spark. So show them on an old vehicle, here it is right in front of you. This same concept is on your internal combustion engine today.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, if kids are not exposed to something, obviously the interest is not going to be there. Mm-hmm. If they don't know, they can't be interested in what they don't know about.
That is true.
But something you said there made me think that about a year and a half ago, I was working with a kid, mid-20s. He had been a mechanic for 7-8 years, and he come work with us on older stuff. He'd worked on newer cars, and we're going to set the timing on a vehicle. Let's get the timing light. And he's like, get the what?
No idea.
Yeah, no idea what a timing light was. Like, all right, let's introduce you to a timing light. And my mind's just froze. Like, how do you not know what a timing light is? Because by the time you was born, there was no need for a timing light on most cars.
Yeah.
And that's what he had been interested in, was newer, what I consider newer cars.
Correct.
That didn't need a timing light. All right, let's teach you about a timing light.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's something that we don't really think about, and how things are moving forward, and the fact that cars that I may be not interested in that are late model cars, there are people that are old enough now, they weren't born when those cars were new, and I still think it's a new car, and I have that disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the same with what you were talking about with the 20-somethings.
Yeah.
So I hope everyone works together and gets everyone involved.
Yeah, and that's just it. We just got to share that information, and don't keep it to yourself thinking, oh, I learned it the hard way, everybody else needs to learn it the hard way. It doesn't have to be that way. No. Share the information, get the younger crowd interested, teach them how to do something. I just taught a 20-year-old kid the other day how to set points on a vehicle.
Yes.
He come up to me, how do you set these points? He knew what they was, didn't know how to set them. He had never done it before.
Yeah.
Simply this is all you do. Like, that's it. And what did it take? 10 minutes of my time to teach him how to do that?
Right.
And
it's on the job training. That's what I had touched on earlier. Immediately right out of high school, I sourced myself, because you said I was immersed in it. I sourced myself going to a restoration shop. And as someone is immediately out of high school, I was thrown into a Corvette restoration shop. And that is what I did immediately starting. And I learned from mentorship. I never knew how to mix fiberglass, never knew how to mix body filler, never knew how to weld anything. All of my technical skills came from mentorship. And from the biggest thing that I promote is learning with your mouth shut.
Yes.
And I do it. 2 ears, one mouth. There's a reason. There's less mouth, more ears.
Yeah.
And sometimes I stumble on that, because I can say it freely. I've ruined and repaired more things than a lot of people have worked on. I learn as I go, and everyone has to do that. And I try to pass that on to people, what I've learned on the fly. This is the way the book says to do it. Here's how I'll teach you how to make money. That's a huge difference.
Yeah. But you also got to go to pretty much everything thinking that you're going to learn something new every day.
We have to learn something new every day.
I mean, not everybody knows absolutely everything.
Right.
I learn something new every day, even at my age.
Yes.
And that's the attitude. We just did some pretty extensive industry research. We finished it just at the end of 2020, where we surveyed about 300 restoration shops across the country. And we asked them, when you are hiring a new person, what are the most important features that you look for in that person? What are those aspects of their personality? Far more important than any sort of previous knowledge was teachability.
Yes.
Every shop owner wants somebody who is going to come in with that good attitude, with their mouth shut and their ears open, and absorb what's being taught. And that to me is very encouraging when we look at the situation with, shop class kind of diminishing across the country. If we still have that attitude of the restoration shop owners being willing to take somebody in and train them on site, as long as we're finding the young people that are, willing to learn and have the right attitude and come in with a professional, hardworking attitude, we're going to get the gap filled. We just need to make those connections and get the young people into the shops.
Yeah, I'd much rather work with somebody that doesn't know much, that has a great attitude, as opposed to somebody that thinks they know it all and a bad attitude. I mean,
that is correct.
Absolutely.
It makes life go much easier, and
on both sides.
On both sides. That's what I say. Life makes life go much easier on both sides, very much, because I'm always talking about either what I'm working on currently, or what I'm doing tomorrow, or some other job that I had done previously and had an experience and learned and repaired things faster and smoother on the job I'm currently working on. That's the ability to recall information and not making the same mistake every time, expecting a different outcome. I think that's important, and that's a technical skill that not everyone has.
Yeah, that's for sure. Another thing that you mentioned earlier on that I wanted to touch on is that passing on of skills. And one of the concerns right now is, we've got these particular skills that are only being practiced in certain areas. When you look at, pre-war vehicles that have wood in the coachwork and, different types of methods for working on the brass, all these different industry secrets that are in the heads of these masters who are diminishing across the country. So what the RPM Foundation has done is we've started a program called the Endangered Skills Program. And we're polling restoration shop owners and enthusiasts about what are the skills that are out there that are in the most demand, but also at the same time in most risk of disappearing by not being practiced enough. So when we have determined which ones are most endangered, we're going to connect masters of those skills with apprentices and then document the process of the apprentice learning the new skill. So not only do we have a new young person out there who knows this endangered skill, we have the process of training recorded on film so that we can share that with institutions like McPherson College or Revs Institute to make sure that future generations will be able to go back and reference it.
That's neat.
That sounds like a fantastic thing. And that is, again, bringing that knowledge to the forefront and being able to digitally record it, because a lot of these things are in books, but not all the books are readily available, or they may be out of print, or somebody may not want to share the knowledge because they just, they wanted to learn it on their own, and they just become grumpy and say, I want someone else to learn it on their own. And they may not.
Yeah.
One of the greatest tools when I started working with my father in the shop was the online forums. I had tinkered with motorcycles. I understood, 4-cycle engines, but I'd never really rebuilt anything. And I joined a website called the Ford Barn. I don't know if you guys
I'm very familiar with that offshoot of the ham.
Love the Ford Barn. And there were guys on there that had just scores and scores of knowledge. And anytime anything stumped me, I'd go on the Ford Barn, I'd post a question, somebody would fire right back with an answer. And it was probably the greatest sharing of information. Sometimes you see the opposite of that. Sometimes you see these guys who, you say, hey, I can't figure this out. And they go, well, if you can't figure it out, you shouldn't be working on an engine. And that infuriates me because at some point you were me. At some point you didn't know what you know right now.
Right.
And how dare you now take that knowledge and keep it and not share it.
Yes.
Right.
We're all in this together. We're all trying to keep this alive and moving forward. And we need to share that knowledge with each other.
My favorite is the search button broken? Ask someone else.
Yeah.
I've run into that on
forums. Is the search button broken?
Yeah.
And I find it terrible that people have to explain themselves when they get on the question. Hey, newbie here, don't flame me too hard.
Right, exactly.
What does it matter if he's a newbie or just simply doesn't know the answer to the question?
Right.
You know, share your knowledge.
It took just as much effort to shoot somebody down as it is to just answer the question.
Right.
Just answer the question. Right.
And if you can't answer the question, take your finger or whatever and scroll. Just keep moving.
We talk about that cycle of nostalgia, and you worry about who is going to be around to really be a steward for the vehicles of that era. When nobody really around can be nostalgic about those vehicles anymore. But it's great to hear that there are young people who are interested in that era. We've got a young man that's in our network. He's a McPherson College graduate named David Phillips, and he just preserved a 1934 British Salmson. And I never heard of this. It's a little 2-seater roadster with a boat tail. Very, very cool car. He brought it to a local car show just a few weeks ago, and I got to see it in person. But there's a guy, late 20s, early 30s, who's into the 30s cars. It's wonderful to see.
McPherson graduate that we had the pleasure of working with at Frisco Hill Auto, which is the place we're at currently now, the restoration shop, is Brad Ulmer. He's a McPherson graduate. Absolutely great kid.
Yeah.
We had done our best to push him along and to get him interested in what's happening. We explained to him how to buy a car, the usual don't buy the first car you see, go online and look and do your research and the whole bit. And we taught him all this stuff. He came to us one day on Marketplace and he said, "Hey, I found this 63 Galaxy. I want to go look at this car." And we're like, "All right, don't be very happy. Kind of don't show your cards. Don't be excited." And we got there and I grabbed him by the shirt and I said, "If you don't buy this car, I'm going to kill you." And he said, "Well, but John, you said don't buy the first car you see." I said, "That was past John. He's an idiot. Don't listen to him."
Listen to present John.
Right.
He knows what he's talking about.
Right.
Brad's being calm, and John and Shawn are running around like kids, like, "Oh my God, look at this thing!"
Yes.
Like, why haven't you loaded this on the trailer yet?
Oh, it's absolutely incredible. And it clicked all the boxes. It was an XL. And it was original red car, red interior, big block, automatic, 35,000 miles. And
price was right.
Price was
It
incredible.
It cranked over and fired for a second.
Yeah.
We're like, "Let's load this thing up." He's like, whoa. I'm not buying this thing today." "No, you have to buy this thing today."
Yes, and it was amazing. And we haven't released it yet, but we have all that on video. And hopefully you see it sometime soon. But Brad is a great kid, and he does everything exactly the way McPherson has taught him. And he's a real big promoter of McPherson College. He's moved on from our shop to more of a brass era, coach built-ish type shop. And he is currently in
Tennessee.
I think he's in Tennessee.
Yeah.
He moved to a shop in Tennessee. And he's having a wonderful time, and we still are in contact with him.
Yep.
You're not the first people who have mentioned him. So I would love to make contact with him and get to know him. I haven't met him personally, but several people have talked about him so far.
Yeah, great technician, very interested in metalworking, knows how to use the English wheel, knows how to fabricate metal panels, knows how to use a bunch of things. And for his age, he brought to the table a lot of workmanship that I didn't see in people his age. And the rest of our older technicians at our shop really encouraged that. It was fantastic.
And he's definitely got a love of pre-war cars as well.
He does have a big love of pre-war cars.
Yeah, you ask him what his dream car is, and he'll start naming off Duesenbergs and stuff like that. And it's like, you sure you didn't mean '69 Camaro? Because most of the people your age are talking about Camaros.
Yeah,
and
you
stuff.
pronounced '69 Camaro wrong. You said Duesenberg.
Yeah, he'll start talking about older cars and stuff. So it's pretty cool that he's got that kind of interest in that era of cars.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
it was absolutely fantastic. But RPM Foundation's doing incredible things, and thank you for explaining that stuff to us. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of you. How about that?
All right. I didn't know I was going to talk about me.
I'd love to talk about you if you'd like.
All right, sure.
We like to know why people are where they're at, doing what they're doing, because that gives other people insights, and it's another one of those letting people know how they can do other things, but they still want to be involved with cars. So we like to explain to people there's other avenues that you can get into other than just working on cars. So, I guess, how did you get interested in cars at an early age?
Definitely my father. My dad, by the time he was married, he had over 25 different cars and was a big car nut. And he was somehow able to kind of tamp that down when he got married and just, get the family truckster and get us all to school on time. And I remember when I was when I was growing up, he always had the Auto Trader magazines lying around his chair. So I would grab them and I'd look through them, and that's how I started, dreaming about, when I can drive, I want to drive. I wanted a Fiat Spider so bad when I was growing up, because it just was such cool looking little cars. So when I was in college, I remember my father had been talking about getting an old car, and when he was in college, he had a 51 Mercury coupe, and he talked for years about his 51 Merc. He loved his 51 Merc. So when my brother and I were in college, we both went to Illinois State University, and we were coming home for a weekend. I said, Dad was supposed to go look at that car this, last week. Do you think he bought? Nah, he's been talking about it for years and years. And it was nighttime. And we're driving down the street, and my brother flicked on the brights, and all of a sudden all this chrome reflected back. And I said, oh my God, he went ahead and did it. So that's where things really took off for me, because that did give me the opportunity to, spend more time with my dad. He would show me, okay, here's the features of the car, and here's what you don't see today. And, I had never understood talking about, getting lucky in the back seat of a car, because, I had a 1983 Mustang, and, I couldn't fit myself in the back seat.
Right,
like,
exactly.
If I could just get into that seat,
yes,
I would be lucky.
Yep.
So like you look at the backseat of a 51 Merc, you understand that. So he's showing me all these different things about the cars, and that put the bug in me. So I bought a 67 Firebird convertible when I was 21 years old, and I was working in a factory making $8 an hour. Every one of my paychecks went right into that car because I didn't wrench on my own. And finally I said, if I'm going to survive and own this car at the same time, I need to learn how to do this stuff. So I had tinkered around with motorcycles and things, and, started doing work on the car. And then, that car turned into another car, and then another car. But it had always been a side thing for me. It was never a career. I went into IT. I worked on computers, and did that for many years, and ended up getting laid off from my job in 2007 when we had the big crash in the economy. Mm-hmm. And nobody was hiring. And my father at the time had started this little dealership out of a little garage in Lockport, Illinois. So he and I would, just to pass the time, go out there and work in the shop with him. And we turned out to work really well together. I could do a lot of mechanical things at that point. So I just made it permanent and worked with him for 7 years. Wow. And he retired around 2014. And we were a real small operation. It was just me. And it's really strange. I'm not married. I don't have kids. So I, would live by myself, get in my car, drive out to the shop, work all day by myself, and then go home. And you kind of worry that you're turning into a weird person when you spend that much time by yourself, So I actually, and you were talking about meeting those people who are unlikely car enthusiasts, the white collar people. Mm-hmm. I was at a party in Old Town, Chicago, which is a very upscale neighborhood, and is a friend of mine who's kind of well-to-do. And I was speaking to a woman at the party, and I was telling her what I did, and she says, "Well, then you must know about the RPM Foundation." Oh, I said, "No, I'd never heard of them." So, "Oh, well, this is wonderful foundation. Here's the information about it." So I called, and I spoke with Diane Fitzgerald, who was the president of the foundation at that time. And they were looking for somebody to handle the grants program. And I jumped at the chance. And it has been the most rewarding job I've ever done, because especially from the grants perspective, you have these programs that are in need. They're doing what we need them to do. They're introducing young people into this industry. And to be able to look over their application, determine that they're in line with our mission, and then help support them with funding. There's nothing like that, nothing like realizing that this program's success is because of your foundation's impact. So I did that for about 3 years. And then when Diane retired, I moved into the position of executive director. And I couldn't do anything else anymore. I just absolutely love it so much. It's such a wonderful job. I meet tremendous people. The young people that come into our network are so passionate and engaged, and people like yourselves and other shop owners that understand the need for it and know that we have to do something, we have to take action, are just terrific people to work with. It's been nothing but a positive experience since I came on.
Incredible story. Yeah. And sounds like obviously you and RPM Foundation are making leaps and bounds and with getting people involved, getting younger people involved.
We're doing everything we can.
So I know you talked about your dad's Mercury. Is that about what year was that? You said you saw that.
He bought that car in 1991.
Okay.
Yeah. And he unfortunately he sold it a few years later. I think he always regretted it, but he he had a couple other ones since then. He actually found a 1951 Mercury convertible, which are tremendously hard to find.
Right.
And had that for a few years.
Okay.
He still has cars. He still has 6 different cars that, I get to help him out with every now and then.
More of a stock appearing guy, or is he interested in modified cars?
We've both been really big into stock. Now, the funny thing is, one of my favorite cars is a 1933 or 1934 Ford.
Mm-hmm.
I've always loved that. I've always wanted one. I own a 34 now, but it's been hot rodded. It's got a Chevy engine and a Chevy transmission. But that, I think, is the only hot rod I've ever owned. Everything else I've done has been very stock.
So what kind of car did you take your driver's test in?
Good question. My driver's test car was a 1984 Pontiac Sunbird station wagon.
Nice.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I accept your condolences.
Now, I mean, I was in an 84 Topaz, Mercury Topaz.
I'm sorry for that.
So now we're right there neck and neck. I know, Shawn, we can have a moment of silence. And my car was a manual. It was my dad's car, manual Mercury Topaz.
That's the best way to take a driver's test. I didn't take mine in a manual, but I think more people need to learn how to drive manuals.
Yeah, very
Everybody
much so.
should know how to drive manual.
Yeah.
You want to keep young people from texting? Put them in a manual.
And keep older people from texting, too. Older people are just as guilty, I think.
Well, I know.
Sometimes.
I know.
Because they think, well, I've been driving for years. I can do this.
Yes, exactly. And I've even been on the phone with my dad, and he's on speakerphone, and he's still holding the phone, driving a 3-speed on the column, and I can hear his voice go away and come forward and go away and come forward, and it's amazing. I'm like, Dad, put the phone down, because he was at that time he was driving a 58 Ford Ranchero 3-speed. And I'm like, Dad, I can hear you very well. Put the phone down. But it's amazing. But yeah, I think that would help keep people from texting is put them in a manual.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned the 34 Ford. Anything else you got in your collection right now?
Yeah, I'm one of the least self-aware people in the world, I think, because I seem to think that I have time to do all these different projects and yet still
guilty
run the right.
Guilty.
Yeah, I've got
so
two.
I did
guilty.
I've got 2 projects right now, and I'm always on Racing Junk or something else looking for other vehicles to buy. And my wife's like, "You got 2 projects now. What are you doing?" I'm like, I'm looking for number 3.
Yes, but did you see this thing?
I need to save this.
Yes.
I have a 68 Pontiac GTO that my uncle bought when it was new, and he actually gifted to me just last year. He unfortunately had a stroke and wasn't able to drive it anymore, but that's got serious rust issues that I'm hoping to take care of someday. I've got a 1972 Triumph Stag that has it blew a head gasket years ago, so I had to completely rebuild the engine on that, and I'm halfway through the engine. I did the dumbest thing anybody could possibly do.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
And I blame it on temporary insanity when I turned 50 and just was, like freaking out about turning 50. I bought a non-running Porsche 928 that had been sitting for years.
Oh my.
And the adage, there's no such thing as a cheap Porsche.
Mm-hmm.
You would think somebody who had, worked in classic cars, bought and sold classic cars for years and years would realize it doesn't matter how cheap it is to buy it. It's what it costs to actually make it run and go. Yeah. So that's the one that, if you guys hear a terrible story about me, that's the reason.
Well, I can say
if I'm in an insane asylum somewhere, that's the reason. I can
say this, at least it's not a 924.
Good point. Although I had a 944 before that.
Yep. I painted quite a lot of those in the 80s and 90s. Yeah, where I was working was right down the street from a Porsche dealer. And how many times I painted guards red over and over and over and over and over.
Mine was guards red. Mine was an early 85, so it was before they put the clear coat on.
Okay.
So I was able to kind of bring the paint back.
Okay.
Because it had that cloudy look to it.
Yep.
But that was a fun car.
Yep. Yeah, they're neat little cars, and I know a lot of the 911 turbos and things like that of the late 70s, early 80s. The prices of those and any of the Targa cars are just absolutely skyrocketing. And again, it's that 30-year cycle of nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
People see it as a younger person. Oh, it'd be cool to own that.
Yes.
And once they get older and get established and have some money,
Yes.
family through, kids through college or whatever, they'll go out and buy that car that they've always wanted.
Yes.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
So any automotive collections, stuff like that, model cars, Hot Wheels, any kind of anything, die cast, any kind of stuff like that you have?
I love
because guy stuff always just spreads. It's just car people just spread to everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it infects you and
the
it
need to collect everything
affects you in different ways.
Well, yeah.
I have a lot of I like accessories for vehicles. I've got an Oldsmobile clock. I've never seen another one that is supposed to fit on the steering wheel, and as you're turning the steering wheel, it rotates. And
I'm familiar with that.
I'd never seen one before, and I was at an auction with my father. One of my father's favorite things to do is to go to an auction, and if they've got a big pile of stuff that nobody wants, he buys it.
Sure.
So we were at an auction where they were selling all the contents of a machine shop, and they had an entire shelving unit that the condition was if you buy this, you have to take everything off the shelving unit. And he buys the entire shelving unit for $1.
Wow.
And I said, you overpaid. Because,
was there money hiding in one of the cubbies?
No, there wasn't. But I was wrong because we were going through all the boxes and stuff, and inside the box, buried a bunch of underneath a bunch of other stuff, was this really neat clock. So I've got stuff like that. I've got actually a radio head from Tucker with the
I'm
push
familiar
buttons
with
on
that.
it. You know, I've got that. I collect all sorts of stuff like that. I'm also I'm big into watches. When the pandemic started, I was looking for something that I could do just right there at my desk and not have to drive out to my shop. So I started buying old mechanical watches, and I watched some videos on how to restore them. So I've been doing watches, but it's collectible stuff. It manages to work its way into all the different aspects of your life, doesn't it?
Oh, yes, guaranteed. Whether it's paper advertisements or magazines or anything that sparks your interest. We always ask people, what drives you?
Yeah.
You have a vehicle and it's sheet metal, rubber, and glass. Why do you care about that car? Why do you care? And why do you care about the automotive restoration industry and preserving history? What drives you? Now we know, what drives Nick Ellis. And that's fantastic.
So, Nick, if you could just wrap up what the RPM Foundation, what it is, what it does, give everybody a synopsis on it, and then how can they get a hold of you? If it's a young person who wants to get a hold of you for some more information, just give us all that if you would, please.
Absolutely. The RPM Foundation stands for Restoration, Preservation, and Mentorship. We support careers in vehicle restoration and preservation through grant funding, through programs of our own, and through career services for young people. So we will do everything that we can to introduce young people into jobs in the industry. To get in touch with us, you can reach us online at rpm.foundation. You can send us an email at info@rpm.foundation. And then our phone number is 855-537-4579. And that goes the same for young people who are interested in taking advantage of the services that RPM offers, or people who are passionate about what we're doing and want to support us through donations. Both of those options are on our website at rpm.foundation.
All right, very good.
Unbelievable talk today.
Yep.
Hopefully we continue our relationship in the future. And
I would love that.
Man,
I think our missions are kind of aligned, and I think we both want to see the same thing, to promote vehicle restoration and get out and drive to the next generation. Let everybody have fun.
Yep. Big
Yeah.
stuff coming from RPM.
Yep.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, thank
Nick.
you. You know, John, everybody likes our breakdown stories.
Oh, yes, always.
Things are always going to go wrong. Not always, but sometimes things go wrong. Minor breakdown story
right.
with Saddle Tramp, my C10.
Right.
Took it down from St. Louis, drove down to Cape Girardeau.
Mm-hmm.
Got down there and kind of tooling around a little bit and was going to go down to watch the great race, watch them come in. And we pulled up trying to figure out where we needed to be. I shut the truck off, wouldn't start again.
Right.
So I don't know if it got hot, vapor locked. I still got to look into it.
Mm-hmm.
But luckily we had another vehicle down there with us.
Right. We were like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Producer
Yep.
Paul's on the cables.
Yep.
He's starting the truck, and
Yeah, all of a sudden John's traffic cop and directing traffic, and he was blocking one lane.
Yeah.
Just had to jump it, fired it back up, and
Right.
all things are good. So just keep in mind when you get out and drive, sometimes not everything goes 100% right, but you can always get through it.
That is true. That is true. You get through it with a good team.
Absolutely. Be sure to follow our friends at racingjunk.com. Use the promo code GETOUT to receive 50% off your Pro Club membership.
Make sure you check out our website, getoutanddrive.com, for everything you never wanted to know about our podcast.
You can learn more about us, you can buy merchandise, and just check out all the fun stuff on our website. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Like, share, give us your comments. Tag us on Twitter at Get Out and Drive Pod.
What drives you?